Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. It's week 2. We got a Thursday night football game. We got a loaded slate of action to unpack. We're going to answer all your fantasy questions that you have for this weekend slate. Let's get it rolling. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 2, the preview edition. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That, of course, my guy, Mario Puig. We made it through Week 1. How are we feeling?
All right. A little weird. It was weird Week 1. Low scoring, I guess. Had to be one of the lower scoring Week 1s in a while. And I guess now we wait with gleeful anticipation to see whether that's just what it's going to be like forever now, or maybe some teams will get a little better in, Week 2 and going onward, and hopefully starting this week.
And another theme that I've noticed from fantasy intelligentsia has been the tight end panic is really seeming to take off. Travis Kelce doesn't have the big game. Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid. I mean, the list goes on among these kind of upper echelon tight ends not performing super well. And, the high watermark for the week was Isaiah Likely, I believe. But, I'm not worried about those guys yet, but we'll kind of weave in some thoughts on these elite tight ends as we break down these games. Why don't we kick things off down in Miami this evening? We've got the Dolphins taking on the Bills. The Dolphins are 2.5-point favorites now. Some notable injury stuff from a fantasy perspective. If you're listening before kickoff on Thursday night, Raheem Mostert not going to play with that chest injury, and Devin Achane going to be having to test some things out with his ankle pregame. So if you have a bit of a lottery ticket from this Miami backfield that's not named Mostert or Achane, who is it?
It's tough to say. It's between, I guess, the fourth rounder Jalen Wright and Jeff Wilson, the longtime Shanahan and McDaniel backup guy. So last week, Wright was scratched. Wilson was the third running back. Maybe that means that Wilson will be the first guy up after Achane, or if Achane's out, the starter. But I don't know. I think Jalen Wright is the more interesting fantasy play because he's just so much more talented from scrimmage than Wilson. And I personally, not that this matters, it's up to whatever McDaniel believes, but I personally don't think Jalen Wright is bad as a pass blocker. Like he might be the second best at worst between, himself and the other three Miami runners. So with one guy at least missing and maybe two, the conditions are just a lot different than last week where they scratched Wright. So he's definitely going to be in, I think. And if he's active, it makes, it makes sense to get him involved in the game plan from scrimmage, because the only reason he wasn't in the game plan last week because they weren't budgeting any snaps for him.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was always going to be a guy conditional to the injury status of both Mostert and Achane. And unfortunately that question is being answered already, but I was a big Jalen Wright guy in the pre-draft process. I was a little bit bummed for his immediate impact with the landing spot, but you still got to like a guy with access to the Miami offense, and it's not hard to see Raheem Mostert not being in a Dolphins uniform like next year, and Jalen Wright kind of taking on that workload, and then Achane and Wright become this really exciting duo down there. And then on the Bills side, there was a lot of new faces as far as that passing game was concerned last week in Buffalo. Josh Allen still performed extremely well, completed a really high percentage of his passes. They weren't going like pass heavy in that game, despite being down for a good bit of that game to the Cardinals. But, for those who are maybe freaking out a little bit about Dalton Kincaid, could a matchup against Miami quell those a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think it's just the matchup. It's more just Kincaid is obviously going to get involved. There's just no way they can run the offense all year like they did last week. So just by, general bounce back, greasy, squeaky wheel, getting the grease, whatever you want to call it, those things are going to dictate that Kincaid bounces back in this game, I think. But yeah, the matchup might be pretty decent. I don't really have a great sense of how the Dolphins try to handle a player like him. I guess you'd rather see a linebacker than Javon Holland, but I don't think it matters. I think by the end of the year, Kincaid is going to take up a substantial target share in Buffalo. And, if he only had 2 targets last week, I think that just sort of makes it that much more likely that he's going to have something like 8 or more in this game. But bad start, admittedly, not what I expected to happen there.
No, but good for our Khalil Shakir agenda, nonetheless. Let's move on over to Sunday. We've got the Ravens. We've got the Raiders. The Ravens 8.5-point favorites. This one was up to 9.5. It's come back a little bit. The look ahead was 7.5. But then the Raiders did what they did on Sunday. It didn't look particularly impressive. Obviously, they are at the rest disadvantage, and they're coming east. So a bit of a body clock conundrum for the Raiders as well. I don't know. With this, the Ravens, they raised a lot of eyebrows last week. They, were much maligned all offseason for forgetting about the run game. I wouldn't say that their lack of usage of Derrick Henry was concerning or really indicative of much going forward. They were behind for a lot of the game, and John Harbaugh seems to, for whatever reason, kind of wilt against Andy Reid and get away from stuff that usually works, that he leans on against other teams. So I expect Derrick Henry to get back on track this week, but I am kind of wondering what you're looking at when it comes to this target pecking order in Baltimore as it is.
I'm a little concerned about it. I mean, I think Henry is still capable. I think it should be easy to make him a centrally productive player in this offense. But I don't think Monken wants to run that offense. It looked like he was running the same offense as last year in week 1. And that just kind of on its face is a really bad sign for the Henry thing, in my opinion, because Henry only makes sense for the Ravens, and the way you budget the Ravens offense to succeed this year, in my opinion, can only go through a approach where you're basically gearing up to run, almost to the extent that you're telling the defense, like, yeah, we're going to run it. Like the Titans used to with Henry. It's like they'd say pretty much, yeah, we're going to run it at least 2 times in the next 3 plays. Good luck to you. And if you give Henry enough shots at a defense, they're just going to wear down. It's a certainty. So I think it makes a lot of sense to have Henry there and play off of that rushing threat with Lamar Jackson. But it's like, even though they went with a lot of 2 tight end offense last week, it was basically a 4 wide offense. They didn't, both because Andrews and Likely don't block that well, and because it was not built like it was not just built like a power formation, and they'd run these kind of just like off tackle shotgun snaps with Henry. So I don't know. That doesn't seem like the best way to use him. And if that is how they're trying to make everything fit, then I think he basically ends up in the exact same role as Gus Edwards last year. Because if Monken's going to use every single slightly pass potential situation as a reason to put Justice Hill on the field, that's never going to go away. That's going to be a weekly feature, So I think Monken has to just get over it and commit to the run, especially their passing game. The receiver personnel is crap and incoherent. It doesn't make sense to be gearing up for like an air raid motion with Derrick Henry, especially when you have those receivers. But I'd love Monken to prove me wrong, obviously.
It's going to be tricky. I think obviously Zay Flowers very much involved. I do fear, and he's one of my more drafted wide receivers in best ball, but I feel like Rashad Bateman's just designated cardio guy. Like, I think as far as targets
Insane
go,
role for him too. That's such a stupid way to use him. You put Walker on the field. Put Devontae Walker on the field if you're going to have Rashad Bateman do clearing routes. That's completely pointless.
I do like the idea of Isaiah Likely sticking as far as
sure.
like a staple in this offense. Like that was like the one real positive, because, Likely was tight end 4, I want to say, from the time that Mark Andrews went out last year against the Bengals through the remainder of the regular season. So in that sample, obviously not a huge sample, but a month and a half, just about, he was pretty dominant. So I think that you don't delete that function from the offense, but they do kind of need to recalibrate everything else around him, because, like you said, I think the operative word is incoherent. As far as the Raiders go, the big splashes were kind of from the backfield with Alex Madison catching the touchdown and Zamir White not doing much. Against the Ravens, how are you feeling?
I think the Raiders offense is in a lot of trouble in this one. It was pretty concerning for Zamir White to have the game like he did last week. And I don't know why this matchup would be any more favorable. So I think you might see another 25, 30 snaps for Alexander Madison in this game at, the expense of Zamir White. But this time, probably neither of them does anything. And I don't know, other than Bowers, maybe Devontae, I don't know who can really do anything with these quarterbacks against this defense. Sorry, Minshew, he's the only one playing. But that's bad. Minshew against this Ravens defense is just kind of like, I don't know. It's a uniquely bad position that whole offense is in because of that quarterback going to that venue and going against that defense.
Oddly enough, except for last year, Gardner Minshew somehow led Indianapolis to a win in Baltimore. That was
that whole throwing it 20 times and hoping it works out thing. That it generally doesn't, and it gets worse when you try it with the Raiders.
Yeah. So that's a step in the wrong direction. If you had a lean spread wise on this one, where would you go? 8.5.
It's a lot of points, but Ravens, because I don't know. I think the Raiders are at risk of a shutout if their defense doesn't score points for them.
Yeah, historically, Lamar has not been great at covering as a big favorite, but at the same time, I think that there's enough working in Baltimore's advantage here with the rest advantage, with the home field advantage, with the
stakes of the game
zone
is high for them because given for how bad the Raiders are, it's a high stakes game for the Ravens. So.
Right. They absolutely cannot mess around in this spot. Before we get on over to the next game, we do have a message from our pals over at Underdog. We're proud to partner with Underdog Fantasy for the NFL season. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. In addition to their popular best ball contest, which I am looking at way too often on Sundays, Underdog also offers great DFS pick'em games. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for your chance to win big. You can win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night by picking between 2 and 8 players to build a pick'em entry. I played on Underdog on Monday night. Got a little bit in on the action for that Jets-Niners game. I had the lower on Brock Purdy. I was really sweating that one out. It was like 238, got up to 231, and then the Niners luckily stopped throwing. I also had the higher on Kyle Juszczyk, and I had something Breece Hall related that came in. So that ended up working out well for your boy. For this week, I do think Derrick Henry gets on track, so I like a higher than 69.5 rushing yards for him. And what else did I like? Rashid Shaheed's always a tricky one because he could always theoretically hit his higher on just one catch, it feels like. So it's sitting right around 34.5. They're playing against Dallas. Should be kind of shootout conditions there. But I'm actually going to go with the lower on Aaron Jones against San Francisco's run defense. That will be my other official play. So a couple of running back-centric picks for me on Underdog this week. Sign up with RWNFL to claim your free pick, plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code RWNFL to claim your free pick, plus that first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. You got to be 18 or older, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 or older in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog operates. Terms apply. Are you concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. If you're in Arizona, go ahead and call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 53342. If you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. All right, more football. Panthers, Chargers. Woo
Yeah, that
boy.
was bad. Yeah, the Panthers. I think the Saints were a little lucky in that game just because the Panthers got ambushed and just ended themselves within like 5 minutes of the game. But the Panthers did appear to be that bad, even if the Saints aren't therefore good for it. But yeah, it's one of those games the Chargers got to be careful just because they're clearly not built for shootouts right now. And if you're always playing close games, you can't make mistakes. You're gonna pay more for the mistakes you make. But just the same, I think classic Harbaugh effect moment as far as that goes. Like they're just not really going to make as many mistakes as other teams. Certainly not as many as the Panthers. So hopefully not jinxing them. But I assume the Chargers are okay here, even though they're probably not going to score that many points.
How excited are you about the J.K. Dobbins start, and by extension, how worried are you about Gus Edwards?
I not to say it'll get better for Edwards, but I don't see Dobbins getting that many more carries per week, and I think clearly he's not going to average 2 40-yard carries every 10 carries. So there has to be more volume. Excuse me, more pass catching work, which I actually am optimistic for that. Like I still believe this Herbert offense is going to get throwing the ball when they just kind of get in that sort of rhythm with the new system, with the new personnel. And at that point, Dobbins might start catching more passes, even without getting more snaps necessarily from Edwards. But this might be a good bounce back spot for Edwards, just because the Panthers should give the Chargers really short fields, and the Chargers should have plenty of time to do whatever really on offense. So, Edwards last year for the Ravens got by fantasy wise because he just had an insane number of carries by the 5-yard line or less. And he can still be that guy. I think it's just last week those situations didn't occur, and maybe they will this week.
Yeah, the Panthers don't look like they'll be able to offer much in the way of resistance, and I believe I saw that Derek Brown is going to be missing for the remainder of the season. So really, like the only good player on the Panthers.
Even Horn was the one that got smoked by Shaheed, right? Not that there's any sin in that, but if like Horn's not any good, it's just they really they suck on defense.
Yeah, and as far as like the number in this game goes, like if it was Brandon Staley's Chargers team giving 5.5 on the road, siding with the home team, no matter how bad they are. But I don't see Harbaugh slipping up here, so I'm with you there. Let's go Saints, Cowboys. Really excited for this one. The Saints kind of conversely, by extension of beating up on the Panthers, kind of opened some people's eyes last week. But now we get to see how real it was, because now they have to go on the road. They have to face a good Cowboys team. Dennis Allen, historically, during his time with the Saints, has not been able to generate or sustain any week-to-week momentum. Like they're awful coming off of wins under Dennis Allen, which is a nifty little trait of his. I don't know how you can just...
It's almost like when they win, they're just lucky or something.
Almost. Or they just play the Panthers. Yeah. So
they just had a division game. Yeah.
Yeah. So fantasy-wise, who do you have your eye on this week that could outperform, what the general consensus is, and who's a guy who could fall flat?
I kind of got to put the whole Saints offense on the fall flat list because, like I was saying, I don't think the Saints should really get much credit for week one. Certainly not the offense. They were just teed up the whole way through the game from the very start. They were not in any stressed positions. So that'll all change against Dallas, going to Dallas, where, I thought Dallas was going to blow it in week one, if only because they were going on the road against a team that had really tough matchups for them. And it was almost a little bit similar with Dallas and Cleveland as it was with the Saints against the Panthers, and that Dallas won that game really early with a lot of luck involved, and they never there was a couple plays by Dak in that first quarter that were legitimately good, but it was more, rather than the Cowboys just killing them right away, it was just kind of like the Browns screwed up a couple times. Dallas ended up 2 touchdowns ahead or whatever, 10 points ahead. and Deshaun Watson can't throw the ball, so the Browns just sank immediately from that point. But with that said, I definitely think the Dallas defense is more real than the Saints were in their game. Like the Saints, I think this could be like a dual letdown spot where Dallas comes out inexplicably a little flat too. But what I don't see as possible is the Saints playing well 2 weeks in a row. So maybe Dallas is sloppy enough that they don't get the 6-point cover, but I really can't see the Saints doing a whole lot proactively here.
I don't either. 2 quick questions from our listeners. Big shout out to our folks that join us on the live from this particular game. Zeke or Malik Neighbors in the flex? Who would you prefer this week? And then Olave or Tyler Lockett?
I would go with Neighbors.
Fix my lighting real quick. Keep going.
I would go Neighbors in the first one, and between Lockett and I got to play Olave over Lockett no matter what the matchup is, I think. But if someone were worried about the Cowboys defense, that would be understandable, especially with the Saints offensive line still not proving itself in pass protection. But I actually think Seattle's offense has a tough matchup, and Lockett's probably going to see a lot of guys like Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones. So that's a tough matchup for Lockett. And yeah, again, Neighbors, I think, probably has a good game against Washington. Otherwise,
yeah, this sets up really nicely for Neighbors. And then, on the Olave Lockett question, yeah, I mean, Lockett definitely surprised a lot of people last week with how involved he was, but not to say that that's going to go away. But yeah, it's as we all kind of learned last week, when the Patriots defense is healthy, like it's pretty good. And I know the Bengals weren't firing on all cylinders or anything like that, but I mean, the Patriots, they're not good, but they're definitely not going to be pushovers at all this year. I think that's definitely a lesson that we learned. Let's move on to our next game, Bucks-Lions. Bucks basically ran through the Commanders like a hot knife through butter last week. The Lions had to get in a bit of a battle with the Rams. That was a very fun Sunday night game ending in overtime. Who, in your mind, is kind of sticking out for potential over and underperformers?
I think Goof gets back on track here. Maybe the Rams defense is just a little better than we thought. Some kind of explanation must exist that doesn't also mean that Goff is just bad at home now. Like, nothing other than Jonah Jackson, I guess, nothing really left the offense. And Jameson Williams clearly has turned a corner, so I would call that a break even. And at home with the Buccaneers working with revamped corner personnel, I think Goff gets good. Amon-Ra, of course, gets back big time here.
I think him and Laporta are the guys that you're kind of watching after less than ideal week ones. You're not even close to panicking on either of those guys yet. But yeah, the Lions tend to be great at home, especially under Goff. I feel like every year, and someone could fact check me on this, but over the last 2-3 years, it feels like there's always an early season game for the Lions at home, not week one, like week 2, week 3. I know the Seahawks were involved in a couple of them that just go nuts. Like we see the over under here at 50, 51, 51 and a half at some shops. This could be that game once again. And I do think that the Bucks, the matchup kind of suits them in the sense that the Lions are going to be really tough against the run this year, but the Bucks aren't super interested in running the ball. So I think that Baker should be able to kind of like answer at least for a while there. Could make the mistake that ends up costing the Bucks. So I'm a little bit torn on the spread here, but I think that this one is going to deliver as far as like that lofty total is concerned.
I'm a little concerned for the over there just because I think the Lions pass defense is a lot better than last year, and Mayfield was a little sketchy. He had 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in that wild card round game or whatever it was. So I'm convinced the Lions show up. Their offense shows up at the very least, and I'm not exactly predicting a shutout here, but I do think the Lions kind of 7.5 is a lot of points. I don't want 7.5 exactly because I don't think the Buccaneers are bad, but yeah, Lions show up, and I'm not convinced Mayfield has a perfectly clean game here.
There are a decent amount of listeners with this exact conundrum, both having rostered both Baker and Goff. They got to make that call this week. I think you lean with the home guy.
I'd go Goff, and I'm a hater, so
You are. So that actually honestly says quite a lot, more than I ever could. Before we get on to the next game, got another message from our friends over at Verse Fantasy. Why wait all season to win in fantasy? With Verse Fantasy, you can cash in every week. Download the Verse app, sync your fantasy league, and start wagering and winning today. Verse Fantasy is the new way to play fantasy. There's no need to draft a new team or bring your league to a new platform. Simply sync up your current league from ESPN, Sleeper, or Yahoo into that Fantasy Verse app and instantly get money lines and spreads for your league's matchups that week. Playing fantasy is fun and cool. We all know that. But playing for real money is the future. Play for real money on your own underdog lines and place contest entries between primetime games to bet on your own comeback. Verse will even show you your odds for winning the title or being crowned the Sacco, which is, as we know, everyone's worst nightmare. Enter the arena this season with Verse Fantasy and use promo code ROTO, that's ROTO, to get 100% deposit match up to $50 when you sign up. Again, that's our friends over at Verse Fantasy. Use that promo code ROTO. Also, I don't know if you guys have heard of FanDuel, but NFL kickoff is here, and FanDuel is giving away a special new offer to RotoWire fans. Sign up and bet $5 on any FanDuel market and receive $200 in bonus bets plus 3 free weeks of NFL Sunday Ticket. Pretty good deal there. Visit sportsbook.fanduel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app in the App Store today to claim this offer. All right, Green Bay, Indy. Probably no Jordan Love. How tough is this going to be for the Packers as far as the offense is concerned? We've seen the line move from Packers -4.5 on the look ahead. Now they are 3-point dogs at home, 2.5-point dogs at certain shops, though. Is the public jumping in with 2 feet too much about the Green Bay backup quarterback situation, or is there a chance that Indianapolis just goes ahead and takes care of business as they should?
There might be a chance that the Packers defense plays heroically and makes a bad game happen for Anthony Richardson. Richardson being a low pass attempt, high average depth of target quarterback does make him susceptible to cold stretches because he doesn't get to 50 passes to make up for the first 25 if the first 25 are bad. It's like he can, like last week, finish a game with completing fewer than 50% of his passes, and if he does that in this game, it does nothing for the Packers offense. That's just going to probably be crap. But the game, if it's low enough scoring, can be dangerous for the Colts either way. And I'm picking the Colts just because I think subjecting a defense to 4 quarters of Jonathan Taylor getting the ball, oftentimes probably on short fields, is just a difficult situation. And Richardson could get going as a runner for a similar reason here. But Malik Willis, I don't know what needs to be added about that guy after that Hail Mary. It was like, as soon as he was in the backfield getting ready for the snap, it was like, oh, he's gonna get sacked, isn't he? And somehow found a way to get sacked on a Hail Mary. And if you can do that, you're never going to get the clock right. You're always going to be off rhythm. And Packers just have to go Bourbon Bowl kind of mentality here.
Yeah, I'm someone that invested heavily in Jordan Love in a Superflex league in an auction, and I'm in trouble. I had to spend a hefty chunk of my free agent budget on Malik Willis. So go Malik Willis, but I'm not really holding my breath on that one. And then make some sense, if you will, of we know Indianapolis is going to lean on Michael Pittman a lot, but Alec Pierce opened some eyes. Ashton Doolin made a great play last week. A.D. Mitchell was close to connecting on some big plays as well. Who kind of emerges as a next option, at least while Josh Downs is out?
I don't know. I guess I'm probably crossing off Doolin for the most part. He only played 9 snaps. Even though he's athletic, he seems like he's kind of just a backup type. So Pierce played 8 more snaps than Mitchell. Pittman only 39 snaps because the Colts ran a comically low number of plays in that game. There's a risk they kind of do that, I guess, going forward. And like I was saying, Richardson is liable to have some games where on a low pass attempt volume, he has a low completion percentage. So you can imagine if just the same way it went, instead of looking good to a bust of a game for Mitchell because of that one missed throw, Pierce getting only 3 targets on 36 snaps. It's like it's easy for all 3 of those passes to end up incomplete, even on just kind of like a median day for Richardson. So I'm not expecting any sort of predictability for the non-Pittman, non-Downs receivers. I think Pierce and Mitchell are both just going to be kind of like boomer bust. But if you got to pick one for this game between Pierce and Mitchell, I'd say Mitchell, just because Mitchell does seem to be the one between himself and Pierce to get slot reps if they're up for grabs. And I don't know, I think Keyshawn Nixon looks pretty beatable. Bullard might be good, but he's a rookie, so maybe you can get something going against him. But I'm not expecting anyone other than Pittman to be reliable in that group. Downs would be the second most when he's back, but right now I think it's just going to be a lot of bombs and a lot of cold stretches when they're not landing.
Yeah, that it is going to be kind of boomer bust from the looks of it. I did go ahead and scoop Alec Pierce in a couple spots. I think I grabbed him Fishbowl and NFFC this week, but not sure if I'm ready to start him. Although time's kind of running out again with Josh Downs hopefully coming back soon. All right, we got a bunch of games to get to here. As we round it out, we're not rounding it out. We got time. Browns, Jags. A couple of teams that really kind of disappoint.
We hate them. Yeah. The Jags are still the Press Taylor, Doug Peterson Jags. Not much to see there. The Browns, well, what can you say about them? I guess I'll pick the Jags to somehow win this game because Trevor Lawrence is good, and I'm not convinced that Watson is good enough, that the Browns offense is in good enough shape right now for the Browns defense to definitely look better in this game than the Jags one. But I don't know. This one could be gross for a lot of reasons, and there could be turnovers, penalties, all kinds of annoying things.
Do you find Brian Thomas to be start worthy at this point?
Yeah, it's a pretty tough matchup, but I don't know. He's a good player, and the Browns do try to do some kind of aggressive, like press, bump and run kind of stuff because those 3 corners are so good. But that could go wrong, against a guy like Brian Thomas with the 4-3-3 and the reach that he has. It's just any mistake you make as a press corner against him is liable to come with a higher cost than when it's against someone less athletic who you can actually catch up to. But yeah, if Thomas just gets to step on someone, they can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, he has that ability. That's why we liked him in best ball. It's going to be hard to again, pick when exactly he goes off, but for him to start the way that he did with that impressive touchdown against Miami, you got to be feeling pretty good. And even with the fumble, I'm feeling good about ETN as well. Going forward, we've got the Niners and the Vikings. Niners about 5-point favorites, depending on where you're looking. So this one, it has come down a little bit. I think that the Niners were like 6.5-point favorites, but on the look ahead line, Vikings, what'd you make of that offense? Like, is this another Saints case where we have a tainted, inapplicable sample from week 1?
Maybe, although I don't know. The Giants defense is not a pushover, so the Vikings offense needs to get some credit for that. Aaron Jones definitely did really well, but maybe I'm just not adjusting quickly enough, but I definitely expect the Vikings offense to struggle a bit more in this game. It's kind of funny that Jordan Addison beat up on Charvarius Ward last year, but with his ankle being a bit goofy, with I don't know, the ankle being bad, and with Ward more so being on Jefferson anyway, it's like we'll see if Addison can beat Lenore or whoever instead. But despite Addison in that passing game going nuts last year against the 49ers, I don't think it's going to happen here.
I don't either. I think that the Niners, they looked great, I thought, on Monday night, kind of against my agenda that I'd been pushing all off season, but there's still plenty of time. But I don't think the Vikings are the team that trips them up. Outside of that game last year, generally, the Niners are really tough on the road. And that's even with, a bit of a rest disadvantage, having last played on Monday night. I think the Vikings, it's going to be tough for them to move the ball on the ground the way that they did against the Giants. So that's why I said I like the lower underdog figure on Aaron Jones. And I do feel good about the Niners taking care of business here. Now, when it comes to Jordan Mason, how high is too high to rank him, if assuming Christian McCaffrey's out again?
Well, he should be top 5 in my opinion. And I don't know where, I guess, behind Taylor, behind probably Kyron Williams. Let's see. Yeah, so something like top 6 maybe. And yeah, I just think it looks good there because if we're right that the 49ers are going to win, maybe we're wrong, but I think they will win. Mason getting volume in the Shanahan system means he's producing is how I see it. And Mason's good. He's not just a product of the system. He was running really well against the Jets.
Yeah, he looked awesome on Monday night. All right, Seahawks, Patriots. What's catching your eye fantasy-wise here?
Nothing. Excuse me. It's probably going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's a dangerous spot for both teams. The Patriots, because they clearly have to run a primitive offense. I love what they were doing with Ramondre Stevenson, but they cannot throw the ball the way they would need to play in a fast-paced game where points are regularly scored. So the Patriots know this. They know they have to drag down their opponents into the mud and kind of try to just keep their head down and get out with a gnarly win. But the Seahawks, while I think in some settings they can shoot it out a little bit, this just is not one of them, in my opinion, that going this far on the road. And their offensive line has been was a problem in week 1. So I'm expecting the offensive line to be kind of sketchy indefinitely for the Seahawks. And meanwhile, the Patriots' 3 corners neutralize each of the Seahawks receivers really well, I think, because Christian Gonzalez, the same way Patrick Surtain is a really good trait match to DK Metcalf. Jonathan Jones is a perfect foil to a guy like Tyler Lockett and Smith and Jigba, and Marcus Jones can take, especially Smith and Jigba, I think. So I'd pick the Seahawks to win, I guess, but I think their defense is going to have to do a lot of the lifting. And I do like the Seahawks defense here.
Yeah, Patriots at home catching the hook. I'm not super sold on the Seahawks. Seahawks got to go a long ways. Give me the Pats here. It'll just shorten that game up. Titans, Jets. Jets 4-point favorites on the roads. The Titans,
they got it. They'll win.
All-time blown cover last week.
Yeah. Titans are awful. That it's disappointing because they have a bunch of good players, but it's not a coherent assemblage. They don't have an actual plan, and you could see it bear out. You could see it against the Bears last week, and Tony Pollard ran well, but that was the only thing they really had going for them. It just looked like a mess otherwise. And I think the Jets can be forgiven for losing to the 49ers on the road. Also, it's kind of an Aaron Rodgers recurring bit to needlessly get blown out in week 1 and then come back better the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's true. His numbers after losses are pretty, astounding. So I tend to agree with you there. Giants, Commanders.
Hate them both so much. So I predicted that last week would be the one good game all year for the Giants offense. So that was stupid. This is a good bounce back spot for them, though. I mean, I think Daniel Jones is just abominable, and I think there's all kinds of stuff dumb about the way the Giants are managed, but the Washington roster is probably or might be the worst in the league, in my opinion. That defense is just not ready to play. That the Giants defense, I think, can give the Washington offense problems. The Jaden Daniels offense was not a serious NFL offense last week, and it won't work if they keep running it. I mean, it didn't work last week. They got beat. So, yeah, I think the Giants somehow win it, but yeah, we got to be on the lookout for ugly play with these two teams.
Yeah, I feel like Red Zone will find a way to bury this game as much as humanly possible, like only on when everything else is at halftime or commercial. On the other end of that spectrum, though, Rams Cards, I think, should be pretty fun. The Cards, I know they lost, but they showed some spunk going into Buffalo, I thought,
initially.
Last week.
I hated the whole second half. You could just tell they were like sinking in quicksand the whole time after starting so fast. So we'll see. I want the Cardinals to do better, but yeah, I think the Rams. Well, I guess they're dealing with so many injuries. It's hard to make a fair expectation. I don't know. I don't trust the Cardinals offense. I think they have to get better, but they had such a bad last 3 quarters actually of last week that it's one of those things that's hard to get out of my mind.
Okay, so 2 fantasy notes from this one, both receiver related. Your thoughts on one, Marvin Harrison, and then 2, did you scoop any of the Rams pass catchers as a result of Puka Nakua's injury, and who do you like going forward in this offense, or are we going to see Cooper Kupp break the single game reception record every week?
Yeah, he's going to catch 28 passes for like 150 yards in this game, and it's going to be awesome. But yeah, I think the Tyler Johnson thing, as much as I'd love for that guy to turn out good in the NFL after all this time, he's never in theory even been a yards after the catch guy. He's like a slowish receiver who needs to kind of win with route running and have space kind of made for him. Demarcus Robinson, and I can't believe I have to say this, but I can't believe I'm saying this. I would take Demarcus Robinson over Tyler Johnson, and rather than Johnson, I would sooner try my luck with Jordan Whittington because I think he could come on a little bit here. But I'm concerned for the Rams offense. I'm concerned it's just kind of a bad offense right now, not just because Nakua's out, but Steve Avila's out. And that guy's really good. Alaric Jackson, I don't think is that great, but he's still out too. Nopum's hurt. So I don't know. I think the Rams are lucky that Ojulari got hurt because this would have been a really good setup for him here if he was healthy. The Cardinals don't have a whole lot in the front 7 to make the Rams hurt for it. But I don't know. As much as I was putting Kyren Williams in the top 5 for running back this week, I don't think he's going to have a 2023 Kyren Williams versus the Cardinals kind of game. I think if the Rams win this, I think it's because they kept the Cardinals to a low point total more so.
Yeah, Kyren Williams and the Cardinals, fool me 3 times. Shame on everybody. Bengals, Chiefs, as we hit this last stretch here. I mean, this is gut check time for the Bengals. Do you think they have it in them?
No, Chiefs rule.
I kind of think so too.
No Marquise Brown though, so that does make it a little more pressure on the other guys in the Chiefs offense. But I just think unless Jamar Chase goes for like 200 yards, I don't know what the Bengals even in theory are supposed to do to keep up with a team like the Chiefs.
Yeah, Chiefs look really, really dangerous. Good job NFL letting them win another Super Bowl last year when they weren't even good.
It's cool that half of the league is just non-competitive every year for teams like the Chiefs.
Awesome. Broncos Steelers. This one in the late afternoon window in Denver. Well, I did pick up Chris Boswell.
Yeah, he's going to break the yardage field goal record at Mile High. If it's warm enough, he actually might. Boswell has really good range, but yeah, it is a slightly dangerous spot for the Steelers in that when you go to Mile High early in the year, if it's hot there, the wind, the air effect is exacerbated, and you can just all of a sudden pull up with cramps or whatever in the second quarter. So the Steelers have to be careful in that sense, but otherwise, I mean, the Broncos suck. That offense they're running is just a joke. Dumb idea by Sean Payton. if that's all he's got, he might as well just pack it up right now, because that's one of the most pitiful offenses I've ever seen, conception wise, certainly execution wise. And going against TJ Watt, Highsmith, Hayward was looking pretty nasty week one. Not a good spot for the Denver offense.
Yeah. We have a total in that game of 36.5. So, I mean, but I see like 16-10 or something.
I don't want to see it, whatever it is. I just don't want to know.
No. Bears, Texans. I'm laying the wood here. I think the Texans looked pretty awesome in week one. Obviously, that game was really close in Indianapolis, but divisional game on the road. Anthony Richardson's just tough to deal with when he's hitting those big shots. The Bears, the Titans gave them the game. So the offense itself, yards per play wise, I think was like 3.3. Caleb Williams, love the guy. Think he's going to turn it around at some point, but I don't think this is the spot on the road against Houston.
Right. The Houston pass defense needs to do better than they did in week one. Maybe it was a little on the safety, but you saw Stingley was beat on that Pierce touchdown. Lassiter, I think, was the one who was beat when Mitchell got wide open and the ball missed. So with that said, with just DJ Moore, or if it's just DJ Moore, it's pretty hard to see the Bears offense as what we were, the reasons what we were optimistic about don't apply. It's like we were optimistic. It's like, you got these three receivers. Like, well, what if we have one of them? It's like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, the depth being tested already with the Odunze injury is definitely a difficult development. Are they going to be able to shift things a little bit, go to the run a little bit more? And if so, like, is DeAndre Swift someone that you can feel okay about in the flex this week, or are you looking somewhere else?
Well, the Houston run defense is really tough, has been going back to last year. And I don't know, Matt Eberflus is a bad coach. I don't think that Waldron is an impressive offensive coordinator. They're already they're showing like they haven't really thought out the offense that well, and they're not committing to the premises that they're going into the game with, which just shows they're fundamentally unserious. They can't make a plan. They can't stick to the plans that they do make. It's a mess. So this offense has enough talent in it, and I think when Williams gets settled in, he'll be able to drag them along somewhat, but not in this game. I think it's just all Bears get wrecked pretty much.
Yep, on national television. Rounded out, Falcons, Eagles in Philly. Eagles 6.5-point favorites. AJ Brown looked incredible, I thought, last Friday. Saquon looked incredible. Nothing about the Falcons looked incredible.
No, the Kirk Cousins thing was a bad idea. We were kind of wondering, like, is he going to be recovered that fast from the injury? The answer is no. In which case, why were they so eager to sign him, especially when they were also going to take what's his name at the 8th pick? Falcons are a stupid team. Almost all teams in the NFL are run by buffoons like these, and this week it's a easy win for the Eagles, who are one of the very few that are run like they're actually trying to win a single game any year.
Yeah, if I'm Kirk Cousins, I'm looking out for Jalen Carter on every play, because Kirk can't even get outside of the tackle box. This is going to be...
He can't... he's from physical limitations been turned into like a Zoolander. It's like he can't even rotate to any direction, let alone the left.
Yeah, there's no pushing off on the back foot. I mean, the film cut-ups were pretty rough, and the Eagles don't have TJ Watt, so that's good for the Falcons. But
that is big, yeah.
But the Eagles kind of on aggregate have a bunch.
They don't have Huff either. At least he's not playing yet. But I just think Cousins is it's like the kind of shape that Peyton Manning was in when his neck didn't work or whatever.
Right.
And except everything's worse than that.
It's insane. Them and the Bengals, kind of like different sides of the same coin, where it's like both these teams look at what they have in training camp with these quarterbacks, and it's like, you think it's just going to magically get better in week one? But Burrow, obviously, different injury and everything like that. But still, it's just...
he needs a lot of. There's a lot of other stuff wrong with the Bengals. I think in Atlanta's case, their roster would be fine if Cousins had two fully functioning legs. But anyway, I think that the Falcons maybe they get shut out and the Eagles only win by like a little bit, but I think either way the Eagles take care of them in an unserious matchup.
I agree. That's going to do it for us here on this edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Big thanks to our sponsors over at Underdog, over at FanDuel, and over at Verse Fantasy, as well as Blue Wire. Have a good week, everybody, and thanks for listening.